Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the slightly late-running session on creating places for children and young people. Thank you all for coming from coffee. I'm sure others will join us in the coming minutes, but I think we should make a start, particularly with the people who are watching online in mind. My name is Tom Cohen. I'm from the University of Westminster in London, and I'm your moderator for today's session. But it's not all about me. It's actually about our 5 speakers. I just have a duty. I have a paragraph which I am legally bound to read out. The purpose of this session: to create lifelong walking habits, it is essential that children feel safe and comfortable on our streets. You'll agree with that, don't you? Good. In this session, we learn from case studies and academic projects that we can do to create, what we can do to create more child-friendly communities. So that's what we're about. We have 5 speakers, all of whom are quite strictly limited on time. And what we've agreed we're going to do, we're going to have all of the presentations back to back. So we won't pause for Q&A after individual presentations. But after we've heard from everyone, I should invite them all to come and sit on these cleverly arranged chairs where the conversation can continue. That's the idea. We're starting at about 11:20. I hope it's okay with you if we have a full 90 minutes, which means that slightly shorter lunch break, but you will be intellectually nourished by the success of the session. That is how I would like you to think about it. So, first of our speakers, I will let him introduce his talk, but I will just say, Andrea Gorini has joined us from Milan, Italy. He is the head of research at Transform Transport, which is a non-profit research foundation focused on innovation in mobility. And whilst Andrea reaches the podium, for the benefit of people who are joining online, please make use of the Slido code on this screen now if you would like to contribute to this conversation. I'm going to invite people who are here physically to use their vocal cords.
Okay, so thank you for the introduction and for spelling very well transport, not easy. So TT is the more friendly way we call it. It's a new, fresh research foundation, which was launched by a consultancy last April. The whole consultancy is Systematica. And so the energy behind the research for the consultancy was very high. So we decided to open up a new initiative fully dedicated to research, and walkability is part of our research approach. Let me skip. So we do produce some publication, and there is the last publication we have produced is also presented here during the conference, Shifting Paradigms, which focus on the impact of COVID. If you are interested about, there is a booklet section, and these are the research topics. There is an automatic animation for the slide. I'm going to speed up the presentation. So we do know very well why we do research about walkability. So sustainability of our cities is very much important for us. And during the pandemic, it was even more clear for decision makers and researchers and practitioners the possibility to produce impact through research related to walkability. And the 15-minute city was kind of a very summary of 40, 50 years of research focusing on the livability of public realm, livability of our city. Is it possible to interrupt the presentation mode so I can say if I do go back? Just I want to highlight it's like probably not possible. Okay, let's say this is the research approach we are following, which is called urban informatics. So combining urban planners, psychologists, social scientists, I'm not psychologists, by the way, people also dedicated to the possibility to implement ICT solution for collecting and analyzing. And today I want to introduce you the case study focused on Bologna and walkability for children in Bologna. So we started working on this project in late 2020, December 2020, in collaboration with the municipality and a foundation, a profit foundation of the municipality called Fondazione Innovazione Urbana, so Foundation for Urban Innovation. And we start producing maps related to the level of walkability for children, focusing on the 15-minute city concept. But it was not enough, let's say. So we start also producing maps looking at other different criteria related to walkability. So the level of road safety, the level of comfort related to the presence of greenery and public spaces, the level of attractiveness, which is the most complicated one. If you want to find a map, the geo data related to how much a street is more pleasant to walk through compared to another. And then also you find the results of a literature review, which was focused on these 4 criteria, so usefulness, comfort, safety, and attractiveness, but also the methodology and tool applied to produce maps for other empirical results. So this is the results of mapping and also defining a new index compared to the walk score, which is one of the standard criteria and tools to map the level of mobility. So the idea here is to, let's say, to use the research approach based on ICP also to challenge standard metrics for evaluating the level of mobility. Not easy to validate this, not easy to validate these new metrics, but I think it's very much interesting. And then we apply also space index, which is another software enabling us to produce a cartographic analysis of a specific neighborhood of the city of Bologna, which was, let's say, targeted by the municipality for the implementation of a new public space for children. And the activity is part of a European project, which is called Extra, Experimental State. We are not officially part of the project, but we support the municipality, in this case, focusing on a micro scale. So let's say we started from literature, GIS, space syntax, and then the use of camera to collect data from about pedestrian data. So the main point of this presentation is, let's say, if tactical urbanism is an experiment by definition, everyone is happy, the municipality is happy, the stakeholder and the end user are happy. Why don't we collect quantitative data to compare the before and after implementation to also to sustain through more robust results, the efficacy, the efficiency, let's say, also from an engineering point of view of the intervention. So we start collecting data. Sorry, back. Okay, we place a camera looking at at this mixed parking area, which was chosen by the municipality for the implementation of the new square. And we collect data 1 month before and 1 month after the implementation of the new public space. And the idea was, in a very poetic way, was to follow the approach of GEL, let's say, or the approach of people who, let's say, get inspired from a snowy day, let's say, able to see the sight lines. So we have no time to wait for a snowy day. Why don't we use the techniques from, let's say, traffic engineering, which is very hard to say, and nerdy somehow, but also to sustain the enthusiastic people which work on this one. And the point, obviously, was also to compare the before and after maps and charts. We were looking at the, let's say, the density in the environment, the density of the restaurant and the speed of the restaurant within the new public space, and also the speed of vehicle. You see everything related to the cost occupancy, let's say, evaluation of a new project, a new implementation, focusing on the behavior of the restaurant. Also, we were testing which was the furniture, the performance of different furnitures for children within the new public space. So, let's say, how comfortable was to use benches, for example. The results are pretty good. And there is a report, an official report, which was published a few days ago, but only in Italian. But we are going to publish, let's say, a translated and also summarized version of the report on our website. And the point was, as you can see, we were like, for example, in this slide, you can see the use of space when it was a dismissed parking area, and the use of space after the implementation of a public space. By the way, the square is nearby an elementary and middle school. So this space was new. Space was fully designed to provide, let's say, the children, the students of the school, a new area for the entrance, also for managing them more in a safe manner at the entrance of the school and the exit of the school, but also the afternoon for the entire community. So the very conclusion is not that the project is good, which was for me was here, let's say, the starting point of the project. But the point is how we can collaborate with decision makers, providing them quantitative data, which could support them, let's say, to limit the possibility of a single node in the project to destroy the entire initiative. Because for sure, the municipality use parking areas to the inhabitants, let's say, not able to park their car anymore. So there is some people who are skeptical about this intervention. But the only let's say, way out to convince them is to also to produce quantitative data about, for example, road safety. The average speed of vehicles increases a lot, and now we are looking at other possibilities to analyze the images and focusing on interaction between vehicle and children pedestrians. Even more easily. This is, let's say, this image summarizes the positive and negative aspect of the project. Let's say this research is also meant to change the layout of the new intervention with an ongoing approach. And let's say we have published the results of this project through our website and journals. So if you are interested about it, feel free to get it. Thank you.
And I'm delighted to say that he has set the tone by being wonderfully prompt. For those who've joined us since we got started, thank you very much for coming. I'm Tom Cohen, I am your host, and you are hopefully in the right place, which is creating places for children and young people. And if you didn't come to this session, stay, because it's the most important session going on right now. Cool. So that was Andrea. Our next speaker, and I'm delighted to say this is going to be a good challenge for my pronunciation across the piece. So see how I do with this one. Anna Siplikova, who joins us from the States, where she's based. Is that right?
Globally based.
She's everywhere. Senior Program Manager at GDCI, the Global Designing Cities Initiative. I'm sure many of you will know that. And she leads the Streets for Kids program there. So our next speaker, Anna.
Thank you so much for this wonderful introduction. So I'm Anna Siplikova, Senior Program Manager with GDCI, but I'm also a mother of a 3-year-old who comes with me on all of my experiments, taking public transit, being in a stroller, being on foot, testing the streets in different cities around the world. So it's not just coming from...
Sorry, you're turning off the sound and stuff like that.
That's right, that's
Okay.
me.
Somebody else.
Oh, that's not So just to say that it's not only coming from my professional experience, but also as a caregiver, as a user, as a mother. So I'm going to tell you quickly who we are. Global Designing Cities Initiative. We're a team of urban planners, designers, and architects. Our executive director here with us. So, it's me on the spot to deliver this wonderful presentation. But we're really passionate in trying to shift the way the cities are designed through changing the streets and making them safe, comfortable, and accessible for everyone, including the little ones. And I know I don't need to convince this crowd that we are at a kind of global health crisis with over 500 children being killed daily through road traffic crashes. And it's not just that. The car dependency in our cities also leads to increased levels of stress, air pollution, lung diseases, lack of physical activity, just to name a few extra factors. So it's truly a global pandemic that unfortunately we don't see as many headlines as I wish we see. And also these numbers are not declining as fast as I would hope. But we are with that in mind, in 2018, GBCI launched the Streets for Kids program that looks at streets holistically through not only moving cars efficiently, but really moving the users, the pedestrians, people who are using public transit, cycling, looking at the streets as public spaces, looking at streets through public health lens, through education lens, through the biggest assets that our cities have, and bringing all the benefits that the well-designed streets can bring to our cities. First and foremost, saving lives, making it comfortable, increasing not only physical mobility, but also economic mobility. Because if you think of the many caregivers, in lots of places, if you have small children, you cannot really move anywhere. You cannot access jobs, you cannot access services. So it really puts a huge amount of population out of being active citizens. And we're seeing really growing interest in this work. We've been lucky to work with 12 cities from around the world in the past 3 years. But every year we get so many inquiries and so many applications. And it's truly amazing to see how much interest and desire and passion there is globally to change streets and make them more comfortable for children. So how we do this? First, we have this really amazing, highly visual publication that we know from our on-the-ground work experience. It's been instrumental to flip the book and just to show the mayors and stakeholders what's possible, like how your average street can be transformed from before and after. And it's kind of recognizable that this is the street in every city that has the same challenges: super wide lanes, fast moving traffic. It's available to download online, and you can also flip through the copy. It's also available in languages. We also do online trainings. That was a bit of forced attempt again through the pandemic to shift all of our work to online. But I can report it's been quite successful also to attract more participants, including women caregivers, people with children who are caring for other relatives who wouldn't otherwise be able to join live sessions. It would be much harder for them to attend at time. And we also created some regional WhatsApp groups where participants share their learnings and findings, trying to create the social space in the virtual world. It works to some extent, but at least we have a chance to kind of get to see other places and travel and see how caregivers and kids experience them everywhere and what type of challenges they're facing. And then I'll bring you to the most important part of my presentation, is actually applying all of what we learned and said and kind of preached on the ground and implementing some projects. And the first project we're going to talk about is in Fortaleza, Brazil, which is a street next to a school zone, which has all of the unfortunate key ingredients that are kind of made us select that site. Is fast moving traffic, lots of children walking to school. And when we do the surveys, it's usually the primary mode of how most of the children get there. No play areas, limited sidewalk space. So quite dangerous and not a very pleasant way to get to school. And with the help of the local team, this street that you can see here was transformed into this vibrant and nice place. This is, you can see how it was during the construction, with maybe some games. So the block of the street limited the traffic, added play space, added benches, basically turned the car-centric place into a public space, playground, a place for caregivers to wait for their children, socialize. This is the school entrance that you can see. So finally adding that needed pedestrian space, giving that room for children to safely walk and wait and just kind of enjoy the environment, having some shade, having some seating, all of the kind of simple and key ingredients. And you can see the amount of pedestrian space that was reclaimed from cars and added that to the community. And the play space that kids really like, that we tried not to do a very kind of traditional playground, but kids really like to play with anything that you put out there if it's designed for kids and that they can experiment and use their imagination, how it's actually use the place. And by eliminating the turning to the street, it also eliminated the turning crash opportunities. So it's not part of the street space so kids can run and learn how to cycle there as well. And then, of course, like the biggest client that we had was actually children themselves who reported that they feel safe and comfortable while playing. And I think like the faces and photos confirm this fact. And the other project that I'll bring you to is in Santiago, Chile, where again, this is all what's happening during like non-travel restrictions, lockdowns in the cities, where with a huge support from the local nonprofits that have been handed. We selected a site, again, next to school, again, same unfortunate conditions of fast-moving traffic, no marked crossings, wide turning radii, fast-moving cars. So it doesn't look like a very nice street to be on, and it's quite dangerous with all of the cars and traffic. But we also were trying to, because we couldn't do the observations that Andrea just mentioned, like looking at the street and counting, the number of pedestrians, because there was a very extended lockdowns. So the team there designed a take-home kit that kids and their families map their journey from their home to school, and also highlighted their emotional state. Because we cannot really ask children if they need more crossings or speed humps, right? They're not the traffic safety experts. But we can ask them, like, do they feel curious? Do they feel happy? Do they feel scared? Do they feel terrified? And kind of like test and understand where their biggest problems in that area. So that was like one of our first experiments, which I think was quite successful. And also communicating that they matter. How they get to school matters. It was also very clear from the drawings. The kids who live by foot or by cycle have very elaborate kind of ideas about the environment, and then kids who are driven by cars had almost this like kind of point A and point B and like much less detail, which kind of has other insights into learning and other challenges. So, but then we took all of what we learned and went right into implementing and transformed this 3 blocks of the sort of street into a people street, as I call them. Again, recovering additional public space, adding crossings, reducing the speeds, reducing the crossing distance, which is automatically makes it safer. The less time kids spend on the road, the safer it is for them to cross. Adding programming and play space, allowing families to use it. You can see people are wearing masks, which you can now use. Already for spring, and again, the kids confirm they like it. This is what they want to see more of, and get to school safely. And this is just a very short testimonials. Lots of people were saying like how safe they feel, how terrified they were before by all of the moving cars, being unable to cross safely even if they are coming with children to school. And lastly, I'll give you a very short glimpse of our third project in Toronto, Albania. If you want to hear more, you should join the session tomorrow at 11 that Simon from Children Maritime is going to have. And again, same ingredients. Streets designed for cars, no space for children, very narrow sidewalks, lots of car parking, and again, during the pandemic, this was a very slow project in a good way because we were able to experiment and test different designs and kind of work with the community to reduce the parking spaces, which if you've done this type of projects, you know this can be a very, very tough scenario to do. And then finally, kind of really learning from each iteration, like how can we better reduce speeds, how can we give more space to children, how we can add more crossings. This is one of the most recent photos from a month ago, where the project went into kind of a second phase, adding more permanent design elements. And I don't know like the right term for this design yet, but it's almost permanent and temporary measures. And this is also a very remote area of front where otherwise no investment from the city would have been made. And really put the spotlight on this type of projects and inspired 11 more school street transformations. So I think that's a huge success, and I know I'm right at time, so I just want to conclude that from all of our lessons learned, there's one big lesson that streets are good for kids are good for everyone, for adults, for families, for different abilities. So I hope that we'll see more school streets, not only next to school, but everywhere in the cities. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. And I'm sure I speak for school when I say I want to move to Fortaleza. Or maybe Santiago, I don't know. Place in Toronto. Brilliant. And thanks again for keeping the time. So, for those who weren't here at the beginning, I'll just confirm that, as you probably inferred, we're just doing all of the presentations back to back, and then we'll have a decent period for discussion involving all the speakers at the end. We started at 20 past 11. With your permission, we'll carry on until about 10 to 1. If people find that they can't resist the hunger pangs, obviously you can leave at 12:30 if you would. So our third speaker is very quick to introduce because she said simply she's from Green Schools Ireland. Kira Hanrahan.
Hi everyone, my name is Kira Hanrahan and I'm team lead on the Green Schools Ireland travel programme. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how a child's perspective is key to all the work that we do with the Green Schools Travel Team. Just to give a little bit of background, Green Schools Ireland is our leading environmental education and management programme. We're known internationally as the Eco School. And we are in Ireland, we are, the Environmental Education Unit of Antarctica coordinate the programme. Schools focus on a particular theme for 2 years as they work through our programme in order to try and achieve some long-term change. Travel is the fourth theme that schools will work on, and they will revisit that after a period of about 8 years to look at the global citizenship and travel. So, the ultimate aim of the travel theme is to increase the number of children walking, cycling, parking, striding, using public transport, scooting on the journey to school. Simply put, we try to reduce the number of private cars on the school road. How do you do this? We have a 7-step methodology that schools implement. They do this with the support of a travel officer. There are 27 travel officers working nationwide. And we bring, a variety of expertise and experience with us to the school. So, students are at the heart of all that happens with Green Schools. It's a student-led programme. So, the start of any school's work on Green Schools Travel is to get a committee together. The Green Schools Committee is usually and hopefully comprised of students from each class so that there is a voice throughout the school. Also, parents, caretakers, secretaries, principals, any other person who might be able to help the school on their work are invited to join the committee. The student's perspective is key. And I suppose the first step for the Green Schools Committee is to undertake a pretty thorough review process with the school in terms of travel. So there's key questions that the committee need to ask students in the school, or there's key issues that they need to identify. So the first step that the committee will do is that they will conduct a very simple, possibly sometimes hands-up travel survey with the students in the school, figuring out how the students are currently traveling to school. They're getting a sense of the picture as it is before work begins, and then it gives them an idea of what is possible, what opportunities. They look at the key risks of the school, and then they look at the barriers or the opportunities that might be present around the school when they're looking at it closer. Taking all that into consideration, they consider what they can do realistically. One of the key review tools is mapping. So every school undertakes a mapping activity, and the purpose of that is to establish where exactly students are coming from. Students undertake this in lots of different ways. Some schools, perhaps maybe the larger schools, will undertake the creation of a digital map, and they will ask the students to, they'll survey their students using an app. In other schools, it's very much a pen and paper job. But either way, a visual map is created and it's put on display on the Green Schools notice board to raise awareness around the theme within the school. Buffer zones are highlighted on the map. The 1 kilometre and 2 kilometre buffer zones with obviously the school placed right in the centre. So that highlights the opportunity that exists for walking to the school. Students, as I said, will place this on the Green Schools notice board, but they'll also share on their social media channels as well, so that the wider community gets a sense of what's happening and what might be possible. This supports realistic target setting. So another benefit of the mapping exercise is that it can create opportunities for curriculum. And here is an example where we have a student from junior school talking about her journey.
Past the skate park, which it is next to my house. I passed the stop sign. Then I passed Bellissimo, the place where you get new hairstyles. I go round the roundabout. I pass the Shannon River. I stop at the traffic light. I turn right and there I am at Salesian Primary School.
Okay. Unfortunately, you couldn't hear Sammy's audio too clearly there. But Sammy is, I think, a 6-year-old student who was set with the task to draw a map of her journey to school. And the results are not there. With Green Schools, we're constantly creating new resources. We have a suite of resources to support your schools available online. Here's an example of one where we invite students to just draw a simple map of their journey to school as they see it. And we leave space below for them to fill out a couple of positives and negatives as they perceive them. I think these completed activities highlight very clearly how we have 6 students drawing the same route, and they all have very different perceptions of their journey to school. And we think these perceptions are key in trying to promote walking to school. Okay. So walkability audits. We spoke about walkability before earlier on in our first presentation. All schools undertaking the travel team conduct a walkability audit with the support of their travel officer. This is very much student-led and student voice is key. So we would be encouraging and promoting all students who come with us on this activity to voice how they feel about the route. Firstly, to get students' perspectives in terms of what routes should be audited. That's very important. We work with a large number of schools, and students themselves know the popular and important routes to school. We plan the walkability audit with the students, and we encourage them to talk about the positives and the negatives that they find along the way. We communicate the findings later and discuss solutions. I'll discuss that in a little more detail. Obviously, communicating the findings of the walkability audit will raise awareness around walking within the school, but it also can highlight some walking routes that maybe some of the students aren't familiar with. It's also an excellent opportunity to highlight some park and stride locations around the community that can be used and accessed by students that they may not have been familiar with. We would encourage students to share not only again with the school community, but also with parents at home through their social media channels. After the audit is complete, students sit down and they compile and discuss their findings. This is a very important part of the process, and it's a very solution-focused activity. Often from this, the students will come up with some soft measures that they can implement immediately within the school. So we might have Green Schools committee members making a presentation to their peers at school assembly, or it could be a case of having a group of 7-year-olds drafting a letter to send home to parents about appropriate tracking at school. So students are first-hand involved in actioning on their findings. A more formal report is also compiled, and where appropriate, this report is submitted to local authorities for action by the relevant person. In some cases, students are not happy with emailing their report off, but they take the report with them themselves into council chambers, as is the example of these boys from County Carlow. This really promotes active citizenship within the school and gives the students a deeper understanding of how our local government works. Walkability isn't all about infrastructure, though. And often we find when students are out walking in their community, what they discuss or the concerns that they bring are more about the look and feel of the exercise. And if a student doesn't feel safe, or if a child doesn't enjoy the experience, then they're less inclined to repeat it. Often students will voice concerns about air pollution, speeding vehicles, or general safety at the school gate. Green Schools Travel have developed a number of campaigns that students can launch within their schools to target these concerns. So we have a No Idling toolkit available online that helps students launch their own campaign and take their own action within their school. The top image there is of a group of students who are delighted with themselves because they have managed to get their parents to sign a No Idling voucher. They've gotten their parents to commit to turning the engine off outside the school. The students down the bottom are undertaking a speed survey. So they have concerns around speed at the front of the school gate. And so a travel officer visits the schools with their speed gun and takes students out and allows them to record their own speed. Oftentimes, the perception that they had about vehicle speeding outside the school gate is correct. And so what they will do is they'll highlight this information to the local community and amongst parents who are often the people who are at. Here is
Our school, Clifton National School, is situated on the extremely busy M15 road.
Data showed that at this time, 32.8% of vehicles were traveling over the 50 km/h speed limit.
Our school, Clifton National School, Our school, Clifton National School, is situated on the extremely busy M15 road.
Data showed that at this time, 32.8% of vehicles were traveling over the 50 km/h speed limit. Our Green Schools Committee went out to record the traffic at 11:30 a.m. the same day. There was a big increase in the number of vehicles traveling over the 50 km/h speed limit.
There's loads of traffic going faster than they should. It's hard to cross the road.
Unfortunately, again, the audio not 100% as we would like it, but I think we get a sense of what the students have done. And, it's great to see them empowered to bring the data that they collected and to discuss how they feel about the situation with local government. Also, students on the back of their findings of the walkability audit could launch a student safety campaign. So this particular example of a school in Limerick were a little bit stumped when they started working with travel team. They had excellent walking infrastructure around the school, yet the numbers of students walking were incredibly low. When they investigated further, they found that parental parking, parental driver behaviour around the school gate in the morning was what was preventing students from walking. So they came up with a very innovative idea to create life-size signs, you might see them there, at the bottom image, child-size figures to place about in key areas to raise awareness. They also engaged with the school community and locals on the issue. The outcome for this particular school, they actually won a national award, a Road Safety Authority Leading Light National Award, and they created safer walking conditions. As part of an action plan, the Green Schools Committee will often launch walking initiatives to get kids moving, to encourage them to start walking. They can come up with all sorts of novel names for the campaign, and they usually choose one particular day in the week when perhaps maybe there aren't after-school activities or there isn't swimming or something like that on their bags. The idea around these initiatives is to give students the opportunity to get out and get moving. We create a bit of a fuss around the launch. We bring along resources, and often travel officers will be found on the morning of the launch, welcoming students as they walk to school. This creates a positive experience and a positive association with walking to school, and one which we hope that students will repeat week on week. Of course, that's not going to happen on its own. So the committee are very, very busy, tasked with continuing to motivate students to engage and then to continue participating in these initiatives. There's lots of different ways that students motivate their peers, and they are best placed to decide how to do so. So you might have a situation where a Green Schools Committee will present to an assembly the day before a walking initiative, for example. We have students who make weekly announcements over the school intercom. And in order to, I suppose, further increase the motivation, and students will monitor weekly how their walking initiatives are going. Very colourful displays are placed all across the school, highlighting awareness and really egging students on to get involved. Having a bit of healthy competition is always helpful too, and up on the top corner you'll see a Golden Boot Award. Basically, the trophy designed and created by the committee for the class that has the most walkers. And this, the more of a fuss that is made about this, the better. Again, we have a short video clip. I'm not sure if it will work. We'll give it a go and if not, I'll explain. So having a listen to the student here explaining how they monitor their walking.
And every month we do a tree. It's for the green schools. Everybody has to try park and stride, cycle or walk. And then if they drive, they get a red one, and if they do any of them, they get a green one.
This young lady is explaining her green tree. So every classroom has a tree, and students who are able to walk or park and stride on the journey to school will place a green tree on the tree on the morning of the WOW morning or the walk to school morning. This creates a very powerful visual because you have trees that maybe are bare at the start of the school's work on the campaign, getting greener and greener as the year progresses. Okay. Green Schools Travel has achieved great success on the ground. From a sample of schools who worked on the theme last year, we found that there was an 85% increase in students who were traveling sustainably and a 77% increase in students who were walking. We launch national events every year. We have a theme week in November. Obviously, this week is Walk to School Week, and we have schools all over the country walking about. We have an Investigate and Create initiative, which we launched to coincide with Walk to School Week, where we're encouraging students to, on their walk to school, record a number of positives that they find on their journey and to create a visual around this that they can share in their school community. We also hold a big travel challenge yearly. And I'll leave the last word to the students. Again, there is an audio, but it's also a visual snapshot of our work throughout the school. Forgot to mention at the very start, Green Schools Travel is funded by the Department of Transport and supported by the National Transport.
Thank you to all our cyclists and walkers.
Thank you very much.
What does that demonstrate? But where hybrid conferences are concerned, if at first you don't succeed, keep trying. Brilliant. That was really great. Thanks. Really inspiring stories from different schools and different settings. Right. Two more presentations to go. The fourth presentation is from Ibrahim Al-Salam, who is joining us from Germany, where he works in Arab. He's a transport planner and modeler, he tells us, and he has a focus on data analysis. Ibrahim.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to speak today about a project, a case study we did in Düsseldorf. I'm a transport planner. I'm based in Berlin. I have worked actually for 2 years here in Dublin. And I cooperate and work with people from the different offices across Europe. So I'm part of a relatively small city. It's the city team, and we are a mix of architects, urban planners, and specialists like me, who specialize in energy, mobility, and other areas of the building environment. Our approach is multidisciplinary and focus on approaching the problem, the building environment, from different point of views. And it's pretty much data driven. We are trying to use a lot of data to inform our concept. We cooperate with other people from different regions within Europe and also from different disciplines. For example, landscape architecture is something we don't have in the team, but we normally cooperate with people from different offices. A changing urban context. So that's a big thing, and we are trying to adapt to this change. You're all aware about the level of urbanization, and 70% of people might live in urban areas in the future, and the majority of them will be under 18 years old. So the question is how children experience cities could be subjective and different from culture to culture, from area to area. But we notice there's a basic need for safe, clean street, not congested area, access to green spaces. So that's drives us to ask the question: what's the role of the built environment? And we believe it's a very big question. You can't really answer it in one sentence. But if we just to connect that to our work, we would like to see how the built environment could activate physically active population, how can facilitate that. And then when you think about kids are very important in this formula because they could be agents of change and they drive these changes in the built environment strong. Arab has been thinking and working on ideas and exploring the built environment. There's a series of population, probably Cities Alive. This is a very interesting thing to go through, which thinks about how to build successful cities for everyone in the city. Another publication which I personally like is the nature-based play, which explores the relationship between play, nature, and climate resilience in the built environment. So that's a little bit of background or introduction to the project. This is Kennedy Dam. It's an area in Düsseldorf. That's exactly how, I don't know if you want to work. That's very difficult in Germany. You have this great big infrastructure. That's from Berlin, but Düsseldorf is not different. And Düsseldorf, you have 16% of people under 18 years old, and this trend has been upward in the last since the 90s. So there's an urgency in the city really to change the situation and opt for the future changes. So we have been approached by the city of Düsseldorf to develop for them a vision for an urban transformation for like a city district or an area, city district in Düsseldorf. So that's a business park, you see here in blue, and surrounded by residential areas and near the main river in Düsseldorf. And this urban, this business park is really well segregated from the rest of the city, or at least the area nearby. So there's a very big infrastructure nearby, like almost here you have around 11 lanes of road. It's very hard to cross. It makes this area like an island, which is not accessible. And also, like maybe I'll elaborate a little bit on that, on the mobility analysis. We have very complicated crossing. You won't be really invited to cross and go there. So for that reason, this area is kind of like extremely inactivated. And the first floor facade is also inactive. So it's a very car-oriented development because it was initially designed as a business area. And so we were thinking about that. We've seen the problems in the area. We're thinking about solution for the mobility, for the microclimate, for the landscape architecture. But there's like a think of doing an urban integration. We're not trying to go there and do things on the ground. We're just trying to develop like a vision for the city to reinvent this whole area. So our vision, it has 3 pillars. Sounds very generic, like people focus, resilience, future-oriented, connected and permeable. And that's very general. We try to understand how that could be implemented in the reality. So we start speaking with people there. We understood exactly what they are concerned, what they are interested in the area, and based on our analysis and speaking with people, we developed 3 different concepts for the area. The first one, Forest Home, is trying to bring this urban forest back to the area. Water for Life is where we try to kind of incubate water features and cater on the accessibility to the proximity to the main river there. And the third one that I would like to speak about today is Walk21, where we try to develop a concept for the area to make it more appealing for people, but also a place where people can be physically active. So thinking back of the three pillars we defined, so we try to set the rules for an area and to develop an area where people can explore and play everywhere with all senses, which also allow them to be active in the area. But also thinking about our background, being very specialists like engineers as well, we try to find a way of things like reinventing also this engineering components and make them also very playful. For example, water features, they are very important for microclimate, and we try to integrate them in the area in a way that they do their function, but also being something people can use and really interact with. Same for shading, also connections when we speak about mobility. So we saw that from Anna and from the other presentations that could be also more active, more dynamic, more interesting for people. So I'm an engineer, normally not someone who uses visual stuff a lot, but I thought if I just copy stuff from the big report we did, it might be boring. So I started looking for some pictures just to visualize this concept for you. So maybe on this slide, pointing some stuff here. So that's the other part of the city and that's the river. And we try to develop this access here to allow this area to be like a connection between the city and the river. And that's our main corridor. And the heart of this corridor needs to be really inviting for people to come, use it, and also spend time in it. And that was an issue there. So we try to speak with people to understand how does that might look like for them to be really inviting and use it to come there. Maybe I'll skip this one. So thinking about mobility, when you connect over this very complicated infrastructure, normally we tend really to build also complicated and big infrastructure. But putting active mobility first, the question was, how can we really connect in a way that you provide not oversized infrastructure, but infrastructure that really reflects the people's needs. And that was another thing we conveyed to the city to think about in the future development. Water features there, being close to the waterfront, which is unactivated. It was interesting also to explore ways of making this space usable and integrate the water better in the urban context. Activating the facade is also again speaking about using all the senses, being able to feel the development, being able to feel the place you are in, and that was also something we conveyed to the city. It's different from the other presentations. We are thinking about the strategic level in this project, and that was the strategy we developed, and now the city will take this strategy from there and develop a master plan in cooperation with many architects that they will work on this area. Exactly. So I'm very proud. Within the 10 minutes, so I'm surprised.
It's not all about timekeeping. It's content too, everybody, but thank you very much to our speakers for being punctual. Right, one more presentation, and this is Roger Healy, who joins us from Canada. Roger tells us he's from KCAT. Maybe he'll tell us what that stands for. Or maybe he'll leave us guessing. It's a grassroots organisation encouraging walking and active transport, implementing a school street model. So a nice match with the other presentation we've already done. Roger.
I'm going to give you, first of all, KCAT stands for Kingston Coalition for Active Transportation. So where's my finger here? And Kingston, I'll give you just a brief geography lesson. Kingston is that blue dot right in the, sort of in the middle. And we're halfway between Toronto and Montreal, just a little bit south of Ottawa. So just to give you another idea, the distance from Kingston to Montreal is the same as Dublin to Galway. And New York City is right at the bottom of that. So we're about 7 hours drive. Okay, so Kingston itself is what I call a Goldilocks city. Not too big, not too small. 150,000 people. It was Canada's first capital. It's a lovely city to work, to live in and work in. And every 5 years they carry out a household travel survey, and the last one was carried out just before the pandemic. So interestingly enough, that of all the people there, everyone makes 400,000 trips daily, which isn't a big surprise. So 2 or 3 per person, and but the mode share, of course, is largely cars. 2/3 of those trips are by car. Only 8% by transit. 18%, which is a big number by North American standards, is walking, and I think a lot of that has to do with the campus environment. I'll show you later on. The location of the school is near there. But generally, the problem is that North America is addicted to cars, and I think it's even more so than Europe. Maybe tell me that if you're not sure. And of course, Canada, in particular, of North America, has a famous prime minister once said, "We don't have enough history, but too much geography." And it's really hard for Europeans to get a grasp of how big Canada is. So it's important. And I'm not offering that as an excuse or an explanation for why we are car addicted, but it is one of the considerations. The other consideration, of course, is that urban areas are designed for cars, unfortunately, very, very much so. And car drivers are equivalent to voters in the minds of politicians. So everything is car-centric. This comes from a report from the city trying to ideally show there's this lovely balance between the providing access to cars and vehicles and then prioritizing pedestrians. But we probably know that the thumbs are heavily on the scale towards the car. It's especially true in North America. And of course, part of the big problem is that active school travel is declining rapidly in North America. When I was a young boy going to school, 1960s, I would have said active school travel is at least 90%. I'm guessing that, but there's nobody in school. But in Toronto, it changed to a study showed that in 1986 it was 60%, and then in 2006 it dropped by half. And then recently, the latest stats are that we're at 20% of our children now go to school by using active travel, which is pretty scary. And this just shows quickly the problem that it's a self-reinforcing feedback loop. So if you look at the circle on the far left, parents have a real or perceived problem of road safety, and therefore they decide, well, we better drive our kids to school, and of course they feed into the problem of having more vehicles from school. So the school rush of those 400 daily trips, there's a lot of, they are the peaks in the morning and the afternoon when children are moving from school. Cars are increasing in number, but they're also increasing in size. Massive big trucks and things. that are being used for personal vehicles. More drivers are speeding, more drivers are distracted by devices, and more drivers are impatient. So that's just something you probably know about. This is just again from that city report, a diagram trying to diagrammatically talk about the reason we have congestion in front of schools. Of course, it's really bad in some schools. And so what a school street does is this. It just blocks off sections of the street. And you see I've also gotten rid of not only the vehicles that are there, left in the important vehicle, the school bus that has to get through, and then got rid of the crossing guard because it's really sort of turning the notion of a crossing guard on its ear and saying, well, why not make the street safe for kids to walk on instead of ushering them across the street? So it's a very simple concept, but it's surprisingly not as common, and it's fairly new. So that's why I'm happy to talk about it. There are way too many cars in the Kingston streets, and we talk about the various reasons why we have a school street. So the Winston Churchill Public School is where that blue dot is, and it's just to point out to you that it's pretty close. This particular school is pretty close to the Queens campus, which is all the green area in the park, and the downtown area is pretty close by. So it's by definition a neighborhood that is, I would say, reasonably affluent. A lot of people who work at the university and the hospital live there, so there's a lot of doctors and lawyers and professors who live there. These are the steps. I won't go through them all. There's a lot of steps. It takes a lot of planning to get a school street going, at least in our jurisdiction, and probably in every jurisdiction around. So the school street itself, we had to deal with all kinds of issues with weather, but it's very simple. Those simple little barricades you see piled up in the snow. We set up the barricades, and it was all run by volunteers. So volunteers were an important part. So they had two roles. They chaperoned the cars, so there were very few cars allowed in. They were mainly the teaching staff and some of the residents who lived on that section of the street. It's a 200-meter section of the street. The other role is that of a monitor, where they were just basically, we call them bouncers. They just told all cars, sorry, you're not allowed in here. And believe me, that's a big shock to a lot of car drivers. They just have never heard of having a street closure. These stats, the table at the top, just show roughly all through the year, we only had less than 2 cars going through this closed street, and in the afternoon, in the morning, and in the afternoon, less than 4. And surprisingly, there were about an average of about 175 kids and adults would walk on that closed area. So it was quite a big balance. So we carried out little hands-up surveys within the class. Remember, we were in COVID, so we're not allowed to go into the classrooms. So luckily, the principal of the school would conduct these. Just going around to the classroom is a very simple thing, having to get to school. And you can see that Kingston really punches way above its weight in terms of, and that's peculiar to that particular neighborhood. They're already very, very inclined to walking to school and riding a bicycle to school. And so you can see what we did notice were a lot of second order effects of this, were a lot of social opportunities, people walking dogs to school with their kids, that kind of stuff. So I'll just quickly go through some of the major lessons we learned. This thing ran for the entire school year last year, and it was all done by volunteers. So the city and school board were quite interested. First of all, it's very important to pick a school. So in our case, because we were doing it for the very first time, we wanted to make sure it was going to be a school that would work, right? So the blue X shows you that other map I showed you. That's very close to the downtown. We investigated several other schools, and for a lot of reasons, they just weren't able to do it. Second lesson is some people will tell you one thing in our early communications about what the school was about, and and then they flipped around. Their answers were quite different. Oops. Okay. Second thing was define the area you want to do and be very careful about that. We made our first area too big. We learned after about 6 weeks, it was just too chaotic. So we dropped it back to a 200-meter stretch. Very important to be flexible to the reaction you're going to get. The volunteer pool was there you see in the nice sunny weather in September. Very important to have. We had a very interesting mix of students, Queen students, and retirees, and then the other thing is, of course, evaluation is very important. So we did a lot of evaluating the sorts of things that we could measure. And the other important lessons: work with your city staff, work with, find a school principal who really wants this to happen, get support from your local elected officials, communicate, and make sure you involve the children. And first and lastly, I suppose this is being part of a study. KCAT and Centre d'Écologie de Montréal, CM. It's a twinning study, so the Montreal is doing the same sorts of things. These are all funded by the major research councils in Canada. And we just had a recent paper published by the academics involved in the evaluation. And as the title says, A Tale of Two Cities, unpacking success and failure. And finally, a shout out to the wonderful kids. I just wanted to mention too if you're familiar with street films, there was a recent one released from New York City about School Street, and it would be interesting to
Don't rush away, Roger. I'll just stay up front with our other speakers, please join. Excellent. Cool. Well, thank you, everyone, and thank you particularly to our speakers for some very rich content and for being punctual. So we've got a little bit of time left. Now, those of you who may not have been here at the very beginning, and it's a while back, so I will just quickly remind you of the titles of the 5 presentations we've heard. So we heard first from Andrea. He talked about walkability for children in Bologna, an urban informatics approach. He was followed by Anna, who talked about lessons learned from the Streets for Kids project. And then we heard from Kira, who talked about how to support walking from a child's perspective. Then Ibrahim, who has quite a long title, I like this. Develop child-friendly urban planning principles for livable and walkable neighborhoods. The case of Wesley, Kennedy Dam, and the Move Düsseldorf vision in Germany. And finally, we just heard from Roger, who talked about encouraging children to learn. Okay, so here's how it's going to work. I will invite you to make it known to me if you're not going to participate. You will tell us very briefly who you are and where you're from. And then you will put a crisp question or an incisive comment, which can be directed at a specific speaker, or if you want just to throw it to the pool of speakers, we'll see who wants to have a go at it. Sound reasonable? Who wants to start?
My name is Sarah. I'm a lecturer in urban design and transport planning here in so I have a question. So I'm not sure who it's for, maybe here, maybe Roger, maybe everyone, I'm not sure. Hopefully not, for your sake. But when I think, Roger, you mentioned the importance of research and evaluation and monitoring, ongoing monitoring. I noticed here in your presentation too, you can hand up surveys and ask, the kids how they got to school. And say one of the metrics, I guess, of success is perhaps the change from those who were being driven to those walking. So I'm just wondering, what role do you think there is for incorporating children's independent mobility as a measure of success in school streets or similar sorts of programs?
Okay. Well, we monitor schools self-monitor. All Green Schools committees monitor, as I mentioned, as part of the review. But also we monitor all of the schools that participate in the programme. We conduct a baseline survey, and then we can conduct a survey at the end of their 2 years working on the programme. We survey all different modes of travelling to school. So we look at students who are walking, cycling, parking, striding, and so forth. And I guess in terms of use those statistics to further encourage students to have answers.
Well, I just add to that, the paper I just flashed out that was just published makes a pretty important point about how important it is to have independent ability and to teach kids that they don't have to be afraid, they don't have to be whatever, and that they can do it. It's so important for their development. And so there's some references to papers there that certainly echo, or they talk about those features. It's very, very important. It's not emphasized.
Yeah, and I wonder whether it's an evolution of how we monitor STEAM. So it's not just whether you go to school, whether you've been accompanied to school, or part of the way or all the way, and the age groups associated with that.
Yeah, in that neighborhood we're dealing with, there was a lot of parental involvement in walking the children to school, way more than anywhere else in the city.
And Roger, were you collecting attitudinal data? Obviously, you had some quantitative about mode, but were you also finding out how the children themselves are finding the school street?
Yes, I couldn't report on that. It's still being analyzed. But yeah, that was being studied by Dr. Collins in Montreal. Just these attitudes of because of COVID, though, we were kind of stuck with not having a lot of before data because we just couldn't collect it. But that's we're still gathering.
I think I will just extend that question, if I may, Sarah. So perhaps for you, Andre, because you showed us what you've been doing with quantitative, is there a way in which you can combine the hard data gathered from perhaps CCTV, I wasn't sure that was what you were using, with the views of the participants, the people in the city?
Yeah, it was. I mean, actually, the Foundation for Urban Innovation, who lead the project, ran many activities more related to qualitative data, which is going to be combined with the quantitative one through Canada. So they need, let's say, focus groups, but also collaborative mapping activities online, but also, let's say, virtual interviews. Also, the main concept by which we describe was designed was chosen by the children of the school. It was about the inclusion, social inclusion. So the thought are designed to be flexible. So you could, like, for example, you could play tennis table or also soccer. The other kind of soccer with the same table is like everything is meant to be used from the point of view of a child.
Thanks for that question.
At the back, sir. Thank you. Hello, my name is Simon Battisti. I'm based in Tirana and working on school streets as well. And I'm wondering, just for the panel, broadly, do you in your work, do you see the school street as a tool to bring up anti-car discourse or walkability in general in your cities? Is the school street itself an instrument to widen that conversation, basically within the city? And if so, how have you found that? to be effective? Or maybe what do you think might need to change within the work that you're doing to broaden that discussion out toward the city?
Let me just check. You say school street, but are you thinking more broadly about these sorts of interventions? Or I think Roger was the only person who's used the phrase school street to describe his.
Yeah, I mean, also the walking school project, or I mean, in general, I guess maybe the work that is focused on kids.
Sure.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So like the children's perspective as a way to have a conversation.
Okay, I'm going to pick on Anna.
Thank you. Well, that's like our primary focus because we realize when you mention children and kids, it's very hard for elected officials to say like, no, we don't want better lives, environments for children. So we intentionally use it and overly emphasize that it's benefiting children and then benefiting everyone on the kind of school street concept, which for me, I define it as a kind of more programming intervention when you close down the street but you don't change the geometry. That allows us to do this type of change in like lots of regions. So Latin America is kind of pioneering, is like leading the technical urbanism way. But this type of projects are not easy to do in some other parts of the world, like in Asia, like Central Asia, where we're working now. It's like almost impossible. It's not in the regulation. Government officials don't understand like what do you mean by temporary. So then if we just say that okay, we'll just close the street as you do for any festivals, events, and allow to have more kids and like use the space, that helps to kind of shift a little bit. But still, all of that requires like kind of the key roadblock is still kind of political will and like find like policy approvals and change in that, but make that change happening. But it really helps to kind of activate the community and get all of the service signatures, like huge support to document, have videos, photos of people actually using this street differently.
So just to follow that up, would it be fair to say that putting you in a difficult position here, that your part of your organisation is probably the most powerful in terms of changing politicians' minds because of you wouldn't run over a kid, would you?
I wish we had like a magic wand to do that. You would be surprised that like even when like terrible events happen and like just the most recent example, I don't want to name the city, but the police officer killed a kid right in front of the school. And still, even that event didn't help to convince that we have to make some permanent design change to the school. But our work helps to kind of convince them, like, let's try for a week, like, let's change the street, and no car is going to be harmed. Like, no driver is going to be upset, but you're going to see, like, lots of happy kids and families. But still, it is very difficult. It all depends on, like, I think it's something that, like, who the voters are, like, who are funding. In, like, some places, the voters, in some other places, like, who's behind. But I think we're getting there with actually new project. It's very hard to go against, like, again, because voter media the conversation of this project.
Would anyone else like to add?
Yeah, maybe just a little bit in our experience when schools host weekly initiatives. You will get big buy-in from the parents because children want to participate. I suppose it's what we call pastor power. But these end up being wonderful mornings, and it's a very positive experience for everybody. And I guess we would hear from maybe teachers or principals anecdotally that they overheard conversations about how great it was in traffic this morning, how it was so much safer, etc. And so that in itself encourages them to participate more.
My name is Oisin O'Connor. I'm a elected representative in King's Council to the south of here in Dublin. My question is around kind of speed of delivery. So here in Dublin, we got our first school street in 2019. And at the moment in Dublin, we have one school street in 2022. In the UK, there's over 500 school streets at this stage. And I think they only started maybe a year or two before we started rolling out. So these are very similar cultural contexts, very similar, local government structures and all the rest. You've all kind of given us kind of examples of projects that obviously a lot has gone into each project and each street and carefully thought out and getting it exactly right. But when we're dealing with maybe there's 200 schools and we're saying, to get this project really right, it's going to take us 1 or 2 years of rolling out the project. And then we're talking about, well, how are we going to get the 100 schools done? Are we going to be 50 years at this, taking that amount of time? Or how do we scale things up to kind of get things sort of, done in the next decade rather than the next 5 decades?
And is your concern that there's an awful lot of planning involved in getting it right, or that there might be political or cultural resistance and the need to design in such detail becomes an excuse for foot dragging?
Yeah, pretty much. There's just such a drain on resources to go after one excellent project, and then you don't really kind of get that coverage across your whole area. And also, I mean, maybe to a sort of, a very kind of on the cold face micro issue, even getting a successful project, as you all probably know, leaves people with scars, like people kind of go in a limb with and they get burned, and then, they maybe don't want to push things too far in the second project, you know what I mean? Because of how much pushback there might have been on the first one. It just happens. It's a common thing that happens quite a lot. So, just wondering how do we go from that one excellent project in your city to rolling it out more broadly?
I can maybe react to that one because it's specifically about school streets, and we definitely have the same issue. How do we scale it up? We're very, very cognizant of the fact that we use volunteers. So volunteers are not sustainable. You can't depend on them, rightly so, just year after year to do the same amount of work. So we sort of force the city and the school boards to come up with this problem. But of course, they're in a Mexican showdown where they're pointing at each other and saying it's your problem, and that is a big issue. And unfortunately, this thing was very inexpensive to operate, and they both say we don't have the funds and the capacity to do this. And it's really frustrating because it's very easy, very inexpensive, and very easy. So really, what's happening in Kingston is the city is supporting it from the equipment point of view and from the technical evaluation of it. So they'll take any street and say, yeah, this will be a good street to use. And then the school boards are learning how to do the implementation part. Because our little group, we're just about 20 people volunteering, and we just can't possibly do it for more than one school. This year, they begged us to do a second year of the same school and a new school, so different school. So we've gone from 1 to 2, but I think if they get their act together and learn how to do this with minimal expense, they'll do it. But they just take a lot of time to figure it out.
1 to 2 is still possibly exponential growth.
Yeah, I know it's massive.
4,
double,
8. Can I put you on the spot, Abraham? You're based in Germany. Most of the time, Germany is held up as a paragon of dealing with these things, and the UK, Ireland, elsewhere, perhaps considered less exemplary. Is it easier?
I don't think it's easy. Definitely in Germany, if you want to do something, there's a lot of discussion. Yeah, but I think when the city gets convinced in an idea, they take action. So I think that probably was makes a difference to other countries. But they take the time really to grasp the idea to make sure that it does make sense. And once they buy it, they take it from there quickly. That's the first thing. The second thing I think probably is also the structure of the business itself in Germany is set up in a specific way. So, for example, for the Westlich Clinic, this whole campus belongs to a certain developer, okay? And the city actually forced the developer to develop like a strategy for the campus, and later to get master plan competition, but we invite architects to develop concept. So the city, I'm not sure how does it work exactly in Ireland, but the city doesn't take everything in its own, but allow also the private sector to also facilitate some changes. But we need to convince them. So we were presenting to the city, we were speaking with the city, and we were working with the city together on this project. And I'm not sure if that's answering your question.
I like your answer.
At the back side. James, I'm with a local authority involved in active travel in school streets and the school street recently, and I suppose I have the scars that the councillor speaks about from a recent project. And I suppose one of the things that from going through it, what I'd say is that the definition of school community is too small. The school is seen as the parents, the teachers, the children, when the definition of school community really is people who lived around the school for 40 years, and when you change a school street, you stop the traffic, you change what's happening in that environment very, very radically. People push against change. The other thing I suppose we found in implementing the school street was that we didn't have examples of it. And I suppose you mentioned that there's only two in the country, one in Malahide last week, the week before. And it's extraordinarily simple how these things are. But the fact that you don't have enough of examples is the real impediment to moving. And I wouldn't be disheartened by the fact that it's slow to start. I think we need to champion the successes that we have. They're not complicated, but there is massive change for the community immediately around the school. And the people who see themselves being outside the school community feel disenfranchised by it actually. The change that they see, I mean, if you were kind of stoic about it, and we would have been, maybe had them of us that didn't engage enough when we had actually run and tried before they left school last year. And then you looked for a closure license, and we had a conversation with residents, and still, I suppose, you're told that you didn't engage. In Ireland, in many ways, people don't engage, and the community doesn't engage until you make the change. And I think
not just in Ireland.
that's the nature. That's the nature of human being. I think the school street notion and the notion of putting children safe. You're saying about it is what politician is going to go against this in a first world country certainly. We found that even after 3 or 4 weeks of doing something that the community around didn't really want, weren't really on board with, and all the kind of typical stuff to put out on social media, you find that after a while people kind of go, you know what, I can't look for the cars to go back down there again. I just can't. Because it is, by its nature, more dangerous. And we always said, when we said to the school, we're not looking to eliminate risk, we're actually moving risk. We feel it's more risky to have them all here. There is a risk around it, but it's less. And no one can really argue with that.
So in the interest of time, I'm afraid I'm just going to have to say, it sounds to me as if we've got a point about defining the community and then bringing the community with us. And perhaps I can just invite whoever wishes to on our panel to respond to that. What is the community where the school is concerned, and what are the points of influence? Where can you have best effect?
With respect to a school street, and we have the same scars of dealing with angry neighbors and things like that, and you can certainly always say it's safety is very clear. But I was surprised. I briefly mentioned that in one slide that the pre-school street we did some surveys and attitudes, and post or once it was implemented, we had completely opposite reactions to. So we thought parents would complain because dropping off the kids to school was just part of their day, and they didn't want to change anything. And but when they saw the safety, they couldn't complain. But when it comes to neighbors, they complained a lot. At first, they go, no big deal. But then when it happened, they complained very vociferously. But surprising part was that the school teachers were the worst complainers. And I nothing against, I love the school teachers, but they didn't like the disruption of having to drive slowly through the street to their parking. So we were totally surprised by that. We thought they'd be really in favor. So you just can't predict who's going to complain.
I think this is one of the most crucial. I'm thinking about practical use. So you are testing a solution for 1 year. Could be short, this year. But I think 1 year is the right time to also to engage the community, to also to say slightly change the direction of the project. The project will recognize the need a drop off the area for the students or for the parents. I mean, back again to the presentation, I see quantitative data. If you show number to the community, probably along with say picture report, let's say qualitative data, but also quantitative one about, for example, the speed of paper, the data about road safety. It's clear the solution is evident for anyone, but sometimes we just one knowledge get destroyed with variation. It's not so possible, it's not so different from the way a municipality runs a public project. So that you bring to why we apply the same for that.
You have to leave it at a very quick comment from you.
Maybe just interesting to mention here. I think when there's new changes, there's an interesting way to do it in Germany on a voluntary basis. So if a neighborhood or like a small city district are willing to implement like a pilot project, and that's very famous in Germany, implementing car-free neighborhoods. So they will sign up, they will sign a contract for 2 years to make this pilot project. And if it's successful, they'll try other people to do similar stuff. So there's this way in Germany of doing it on a voluntary basis. And I found it also super interesting for catalysts watching as well.
Is there a name for that?
I can't give you the German name. I can write it down.
For security.
Rob is going to be down.
That many syllables. We're going to have to leave it, I'm afraid, because I need to let you get some lunch. But here's how it's going to work. These 5 good individuals might be here, and you might be able to follow them for a brief additional chat. I want to thank Shane for keeping the show on the road technically throughout. And much more, I would like to thank our 5 speakers.